Welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode number 229. We will now take up the fourth resolution, suffrage in the Congress. All right now listen, the entire project revolves around this issue, and we have to look at things not only as they are now, but as they'll also be in the future. Now, we are a unique people. We have fewer people of wealth or rank than any other country. Every free man has an equal opportunity and right to security and liberty as the next free man, and even a moderate possession of property grants them privileges that are not seen in other countries. And there are vast uncultivated stretches of land in the West that will attract the industrious among us and immigrants. Nobody is excluded by wealth or rank from voting, of being a representative. That's why we need to steer clear of the British model. What works there will never work here. Nobody here can aspire to be a monarch like over there because it is hereditary there, and that doesn't exist here. That British monarchy was born in the forest of Germany. The nobles, with their possessions and dependents, were the source of power that formed a permanent body. They had an allegiance to the monarch and to the people, their own class of people, that is. The monarch, he looked up to the nobles and could not act without their approval. Taxation was the reason behind their House of Commons being formed. At first, the Commons came under the heel of the House of Lords, where the Commons had only the right to consent, but not consult. Now, over time, the Commons became stronger and a good balance was established between the people and the monarch. That cannot happen here because we Americans are an equal people. The rich men are the most powerful and the most dangerous to good government. There are maybe, 100 rich people in all of Europe who hold all that political power on that continent. But the genius of America and the opportunities for all will swell our ranks greater than 100 people. Settlement and development in the West all but guarantees this. Where are the riches and the wealth that this government we wish to create come from? From 100 men? No, I don't think so. It's from the people. Will a rich and aristocratic class emerge to hold the levers of government hostage? Well, it hasn't happened in 100 years. Now I kind of doubt it ever will. How will this change come about? And certainly not from the landed class because they're too unproductive and divided. From the merchants? I think that's where it's going to start. On commerce, trade, and mercantilism, we have acted wrong in the past. We consider ourselves inhabitants of an old country when we are a new country. We can fix our past errors if we correctly address our commercial interests. Now, a lot of you are talking about Rome and Greece, but we have nothing in common with them. Do we have the military habits of Sparta or the law-giving habits of Rome? Do we share anything in common with the Belgic Confederation or the craziness over there in Germany? We have nothing in common with their histories, their habits, their culture, their language, or most importantly, their constitutions. So it comes down to this. We're a country rich in the natural capital and human resources, and we can extend to everyone the blessings of liberty and prosperity. To gain the respect of foreign nations, we must first respect ourselves. Conquest and superiority have no place in a Republican government. Now, let me tell you, despite the occasional rancor here over the past few weeks, I started to think a little. What exactly are we trying to create here? I think it's a lasting government, so we don't have to meet here again 10 years down the line to reconsider some things. We're here for the future so that those things listed in our wonderful declaration are preserved for future generations of Americans. Now, in a general sense, all are created equal, but we know that not to be the case. The situations dictate actual Inequality. Life isn't fair at times. Get over it. What we create, however, must take into account the habits and genius of the people, and it needs to grow from the people. There are three classes of people in this country. There's the professionals, and they're always going to find a home in government. The second is the commercial class, who will pursue their commercial interests. And the third is the owners and cultivators of the land, and they are the basis of the people. Each will pursue their own interests, but politically, they are equal. They depend on each other. Because what good is a crop of rice if the merchant can't sell it? And both a merchant and a farmer can't enter into a contract without the professional. So the question becomes, what's the best government that fits this reality? Now, some have suggested the current form simply needs some adjustments here and there, granting them specific powers and means to enforce their edicts. The current confederation has proven itself not up to the task. No national government will emerge from our efforts if we do not recognize the states as political beings and preserve for them the possession of their local rights. The national government will depend on them for enforcement. This country is 400 miles wide and 1,500 miles long. State governments must remain to avoid inevitable confusion. I am inclined to reconsider proportional representation in the Senate. The arguments of the smaller states do have some merit. If Virginia has 16 votes and the small states together have 16 votes, the wishes of Virginia do not represent the whole. Because Boston exerted too much influence, we decided that those from larger districts should not be apportioned by population, and the system has worked. As a small state, Delaware has been in a partnership with all the other states, regardless of their size. We must adjust the affairs of the old before we embark on something new. If proportions of contributions to the Treasury were more fair, then we might listen. The current Congress has certainly made mistakes, and they try to fix them all to no avail. We need a system that will do justice for all, not just for Delaware. The plan being proposed is the best hope for the small states. Otherwise, the injustices you infer will only persist. The square mileage of this country and the population that will occupy it, not to mention the government we propose, will have an enormous influence on the people. I'm opposed to the Senate appointed by the state legislatures. We should stand here as dual citizens, a citizen of the United States and a citizen of our particular state. As the power of government is drawn from the people of both, the mode of election should be the same. Yeah, and Joe Blow is still a citizen of a state, so what difference does it make if the people of the state or the legislature that represent the people of that same goddamn state make the choice? Either way, local interests and prejudices are going to get in. Pinckney's right. This national government needs the cooperation of the states, so why not give them a say? Virginia can't extend their authority into the Kentucky territory, and Massachusetts can't keep peace 100 miles from their capital. All these states are Republican, but you keep pointing out the failures of Confederation, while the failures of republics are more recent and noteworthy. Mr. Wilson's ideas would be the death of the states. Maybe we should postpone this and take up the 8th resolution, which is to fix the right of suffrage in the Senate. And that may clear some things up. I'll for any plan that preserves the state governments because the happiness of the people depends on them. Until I see some actual numbers, I won't vote on the principle of this. Give me a number and I'm going to think about it a little bit harder. All this back and forth is just giving me a headache. All this talk is nothing more than a defense of their powers. Most of the talk is horseshit. Call it whatever you want, but I see no reason why states should not have some self-defense, and the best one is for the state legislatures to appoint these senators. We're getting nowhere fast. Let's postpone this and move on to the 8th resolution. This proposal was defeated 7-4. On the proposal that the Senate will be chosen by the state legislatures, how do we vote? Okay, it passes what looks like 9-2. That they be 30 years old? Cool, that passes 11-0. That they serve a term of 7 years? I suggest 4 years with 1/4 of them elected on a rotational basis. I like this idea of rotation. It adds new blood. Why don't you think about that, Madison? Well, if we're going to have rotation, then 7 years makes no sense. 6 is better, and 1/3 are elected every 2 years. Whoa, now, slow down there. I failed mathematics. No, it should be 4 years. Any longer, and they'll become a fixture in the seat of government. They could take up a residence there and lose sight of their constituents. No offense, Franklin, but the postage moves slow to South Carolina. By a vote of 8-3, the 7-year term was struck, and the 6-year term was tied 5-5. Just grading another tie vote. Yo, Maryland, what's going on over there? That loser Martin dude sent here just to gum everything up. I believe we should adjourn for the day. The vote was tied 5-5. Now you're just doing it to be an asshole. A vote was taken on a 5-year term for the Senate that ended in a tie. That's one fucking person over there. What did you say, Pinckney? I said they have one lucky person over there. Well, you're lucky my hearing is as bad as my teeth. Hey, Franklin, can you invent something so people can hear better? I suggest you take a small piece of cotton, stick it on the end of a stick, and clean your ear. I shall call it a Q-tip. Oh, good God, July 4th can't come soon enough. Screw the vote. We're adjourned. We were discussing the length of term for the Senate. Have at it. 6 years with elections every 2 years rotationally. Nope. 4 years. States had different interests. The South has little in common with New England. Even in the South, the interests of South Carolina differ from those of Virginia. If the term is too long, they are just going to settle in New York. 9 years. It is amenable to rotation. I prefer lifetime tenure, but not getting that, and the longest term possible. Well, I'm not a fan of this Republican government, so we have to think into the future and figure this all out correctly now. There is no equality in property, and as long as liberty exists, there will always be inequalities. It's not the length of the term that matters, it's what you do during that term. We all want an efficient government, but differ on how to get there. Too long of a term smacks of monarchy, and I ain't going there. Whatever we do will be liked by some and hated by some. If we do nothing, however, the options are anarchy, tyranny, or a foreign invasion. A government can be seen in 2 ways, one to its citizens and one to foreign countries. It's liable to tyranny or anarchy from within or war and foreign invasion from without. Now, if Great Britain refuses to sign a commercial treaty with us because they see no stability in our government, and quite frankly, I can't blame them, the Senate will be the most likely body to deal with treaties, and long-term stability is important there. Let's vote on a 9-year term now. The idea was defeated 9-2. Then 6 years with rotation and elections every 2 years. Well, praise sweet Jesus, it passes 8-3. Should they receive fixed stipends? Nope, no salary at all. Since the Senate is supposed to represent the wealth of the country, it should be composed of wealthy men. You don't want a Senate filled with stupid backwoods hicks who barely know how to wipe their own goddamn asses. Well, I wouldn't put it that way, but if we fix their salaries and announce it to the world, it would appear we are creating offices for ourselves. No salary was defeated 6-5. Then change the wording to compensation for their time of service. This resolution passed. Well, then South Carolina must complain. We don't like this word fixed and reserve the right to revisit this issue. I move to strike the term to be paid from the Treasury and suggest they be paid by their states. This way, the states have an incentive to actually appoint someone. No, 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 and no. Then you're defeating the 6-year term we just agreed upon. That'd be like a lifetime appointment if the states pay them. The purpose of the Senate is to hold the balance between the states. If we approve this, the senators will be agents of the state, and that's hardly independent. If you leave it to the states, exigencies will occur, and they may not pay these senators. Let's just vote on Ellsworth's idea. It fails, 6-5. I propose that a measure of wealth, the best being property, should be considered. I offer this not as a motion, but as food for thought. The clause as written was then defeated, 6-5. Well, I move to strike the clause regarding ineligibility to hold state office. This would only make the person more dependent on the state. Haven't you been listening? Do you need one of Franklin's Q-tips? We have to make the states as much as possible a part of this government. If they're appointed by the states states should pay them, and states should not be barred from calling them into service of their state. Then they should not hold any other federal office while they serve in the Senate. This idea passed 8-3. I then move that they be ineligible for national office for 1 year after they leave the Senate. The idea is adopted 7-4, that each house shall originate legislation. No objections. No. The idea is adopted. General Washington, we are adjourned. I move that before we discuss the powers of Congress, we address the 7th and 8th resolutions, which regard the right of suffrage in both houses. This is a fundamental question that must be addressed. A motion being offered that the right of suffrage in the first branch should be according to a fair ratio. I must say that what I've heard so far has left me astonished, and I don't know where to begin. I've heard a lot of political theory and a lot of history these past few days, and I now believe you're all barking up the wrong tree. A federal government, whether you call it national or not, must preserve the state governments. It is through the states that the people receive their greatest happiness, and the government closest to the people is the best people, not one sitting in New York or Philadelphia. Of course, there is a need for government, but it must have clearly defined powers. As Mr. Rutledge said, we must first solve the suffrage idea before we consider these powers. Now, we've agreed to the terms and qualifications without even determining how many people will exist in this Congress being proposed. And the arguments are going all over the place. The Congress that exists is too weak and doesn't have enough powers. The Congress you proposed is supposed to have few and defined powers. So which is it? Are we to abolish one weak Congress only to create another weak Congress? And suppose we do. If we can give it few powers, we can also give it more power. And that is what will happen. A body of government that is formed never gives up any power, and only wants more. Now, I come from Maryland, but I ask you, does the planter in Virginia care about what happens in Massachusetts? I can assure you they don't, but they sure as hell care about what's happening in Richmond. The people of Maryland are more concerned about events in Annapolis than events in Philadelphia. People may have information from other states through the postage, but that's just fodder for conversation on a Sunday afternoon. The delegation from Virginia says states have nothing to fear about a national government. They say the small states have nothing to fear from the large. They can say that because they're large and wealthy. And they say that through all of history, it is the small that eat the large. They say this with a straight face, ignoring their history books and their political books on their parts about tyranny. A national government is naturally larger and powerful than its parts. Now, it's the states that should fear a national government. Now, as I read these resolutions, I understand we are to have our efforts approved by the people. Mr. Madison and his friends from Virginia want to throw this country back into a state of nature. The Articles, although flawed, brought us out of that state, and they want us to start all over. This plan of Virginia is planting the seeds for the dissolution of the states, so that a large, ugly tree will grow and suck the life out of the beautiful crops. It will occur slowly at first, but the thirst for power will grow over time to feed that ugly tree. Let's cut to the chase. We meet here in Philadelphia because of an event 100 miles from Boston. We're here because a few states did not comply with a congressional request for revenue. Today, those states are not being punished with coercion, but with the possibility of their destruction. Did any state tell Congress to fuck off, or did they try their best to comply? I mean, even the worst lawyer gets a second crack at it. But we would deny that fundamental right to a state. And why were they unable to pay their debts to the national treasury? It was the heaviness of private debt and the waste of property over 8 years of war. Now, Mr. Madison cited the compact between his state and mine. He mentioned this as a defect of the Articles because it was never approved by the Congress. He said that when Massachusetts raised troops to kill a rebellion within their borders, that too violated the Articles. But I don't see violations. I see civilized states behaving like a civilized state. An equal vote among all the states was essential to getting the Articles approved. There was debate about this then, yet every state signed on to it. You mentioned now that it was the circumstances of the time. What you failed to mention is that your word was only good until now. The equality of the vote in the Articles was based on justice and freedom, not just policy, expediency, or the circumstances at the time. Now, I will readily admit two things. First, the Articles have shown some defects, and perhaps they need a firm executive to deal with them. And perhaps they should be given more well-defined powers. Second, states could give up their sovereignty, but states should not do so. States, like individuals, are both sovereign and free. If you doubt my words, go read your Locke. Once a state gives up its sovereignty, it surrenders its liberty also. Mr. Madison and company want to instill the worst kind of slavery, worse than that which binds the Negro slaves to their masters. They want to make 10 states slaves on a plantation called the national government. Excuse me. Together, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Massachusetts have almost half the population of the country. That gives them almost half the votes. That gives them almost half the power. This cabal of states would do whatever they wished unless the skies opened up and God himself came down and created this great union of the other 10 states. To defeat this cabal would require all other 10 states to stand steadfast and united in all situations. But all they need to do is pick off one state. Holding 10 states together is harder than picking off a state. But just look at this convention and how hard it is to get 10 votes or 10 states to agree on basically anything. But in those tied or 6-5 votes, all it takes is one to swing the outcome. And it would be the same in this Congress they propose. And once they get the power, what will happen? They'll dictate the executive. They'll dictate the judges who will do their bidding. Men will always show partiality to their state, not the national government. And I think I speak for many states that will never allow this national government ever to negate a state law. Not a single vote nor a single person who signed the Articles objected to the equality of votes in Congress. Not one. Some have suggested that the smaller states should join together, but maybe a better solution is for the larger states to divide. The hour is drawing late, and I ask that we adjourn, but that I may continue my remarks in the morning. We are adjourned.